Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Usually Fixing and Tinkering, and as promised I have come back to have a look at one of Martyn's cars again. We looked at his entire collection last year of somewhat 5 cars, and we're going to start with what he referred to as the runt of the litter, as what he was once known, but has now become one of the main actual staples of his fleet and one of the most reliable ones. He's 45. And we're going to compare it with my 45 because his is also a Mark 1 CVT 1.8, exactly the same configuration in the drivetrain as Beatrix. So this is going to be a comparison and difference. Hello, yep, you can see me. It's a very bright day today, and we've got both cars lined up. We've got lovely Beatrix and what Martyn refers to as Virginia the Creeper, basically named because the gearbox tends to enjoy moving off as soon as you put it in D. It is very, very willing to go, and this is a 45 Mark 1. You could say pre-facelift, you can say facelift, but most people refer to them as Mark 1, Mark 2. Obviously, the Mark 1 came out in 2000, and then the Mark 2 in April 2004, which had a very, very short life. The Mark 1, this particular Mark 1, is an IXS. Now, Martyn's car is a hatchback, okay? This is a hatch exactly the same as mine, so we've got no saloons today. Sorry about that, guys, but there is a heck of a lot of similarities between the two cars, but that makes it all the more interesting in terms of comparing, well, specifically what Project Drive maybe took away, but what it added. I'm not going to really talk much about Project Drive today because there's a lot of misconceptions regarding these two cars particularly. Martyn's car is a 2001 X registration, okay, so that is pre-Project Drive. So this car has all the features that you would expect on a 45. Nothing has been taken away, the full fat version. Beatrix is what I would generally believe is a post-Project Drive car, because Project Drive for me stopped when it came to the Mark II 25, 45 and 75. It had virtually stopped, and this was the point where they started adding a lot of bits back to this lineup, especially this car. So we'll have a look at that in a second, but most of you who know Beatrix, I will go over it again, but let's just take a look at Martyn's IXS. Now the IXS, it stood between, now in the hatchback models you had different specifications for hatchback and saloon. The hatchback, you had the IS, then the IXS, which this is, and the IXL. Now I presume the S in IXS stands for sport and the IXL stands for luxury, because on the IXS you get front fog lights and you get a rear spoiler on the boot. So it didn't really add anything into the interior. You don't really have any headrests. You have this diamond pattern on the seats, and generally you got what most of what the IS would have had, just a few little touches here and there. Obviously you've got these 15-inch fission alloy wheels to go, so you have got quite a few differences there. The IXL differs in a few different ways. It would have had rear headrests as such. It would have had coronet wheels, 15-inch as usual. It would have had rear armrests, mat pockets. It would have had a few little bits and pieces that you would have had if you hadn't have had the IXS. Stranger with the IXS though, if you had a comfort pack option and you took that up, you'd have added a few of these things like mat pockets, rear armrest, and some sort of adjustment, height adjustment on the passenger seat. On the IXL, strangely, you had a few of those options, but you didn't get the adjustment on the passenger seat for some reason. Bit of a weird one that was, but there isn't a great deal that the IXL added that the IXS doesn't have, but that's just a bit of the ins and outs of that. So the IXS, the sports, and then the IXL concentrates on the interior of the car. So if we go into Martyn's car, we can actually just have a look at the interior. As I say, diamond pattern seats, and we have some very cheap vinyl covered cubby, which does feel a lot cheaper than in the Mark II 45. But what we do have, if I just shut this door, excuse the sun, is this lovely integral piece of walnut into the doors. Now, some people say that that's a really nice high quality feature that the Mark II doesn't have. But actually, when I got in here earlier, I really took it in and had a really good think about what I actually think, and instinctiveness comes to mind. It just feels like a Civic. It just feels like a Civic, which is what it is, but it just doesn't feel, it doesn't look particularly British. It looks like a Japanese interpretation of Britishness, where they've just slapped a bit of walnut there and then put a bit there, whereas the Mark II gets away from that because it's got a completely different dashboard and it doesn't really feel in any way Japanesey whatsoever. That's the thing with that one. But if we go to the center console, I do forgive the sun. We are having some severe sun here coming through. But we've got the manual heating controls with this clunky ratchet system, and then we've got this on and off cold setting, which it's okay, it's not too bad. We've got 5 settings on the fan. We've got these recirculation buttons and aircon buttons. Everything's really nice to touch, actually. We've got the original Rover radio with the Rover emblem, which is something I really like, actually. On and off, which is it's a delight to use, I will tell you that. It's a really nice radio, this, and it works absolutely fine. Got some decent dials in front of us, you know, black dials. It looks very Honda-ish, doesn't it? And then we've got this small Rover emblem on the steering wheel, absolutely fantastic. And then we've got the mirror adjustment down here, which is all the same. We've got auto written on this, which I don't have on mine, which is interesting. But the material is very much the same material on the seat. So this sort of material on the outer of the seat. So this is the hard wearing piece, and then this is the sort of pile. It's sort of like, not velour, but it's like pile. And you have the same material on the door cards, which I don't think they actually look anywhere near as good as what I've got in the Mark II, which is quite interesting. That wouldn't be a normal assumption. But we have the... Sorry, Martin, it's happened again. These things are just awful. Unfortunately, the clip's breaking them and persuading that to stay in there. Yeah, that's it's a good feature when they actually work, these clips, and it keeps everything tidy. But as I say, no centre armrest unless you've got the comfort pack, and no matte pockets. Hence why Martin has bought some very nice additions. It looks like it's wearing a bib, to be honest with you. But yeah, no headrests. It doesn't look particularly good, does it? So the IXL definitely added something, and in the IXS, there's presumed sports version, it's yeah, looks a bit Spartan, but you know, free flow. Well, apart from that, everything is, you know, plush. I've got to say, these seats, I would say I'm going to give these seats, the 45 seats that are based on Rover 75 seat frames, which is something that the Mark II's lost because of Project Drive. I would definitely say these are about a 7 out of 10. They're comfortable, but I would not say that those seats in there are any less comfortable. So I'm sorry for all those people who seem to think, oh yeah, the early 45 seats, they were very similar to the 75 seats. They're much better seats to sit in than the later seats. Rubbish. You've never sat in a Mark II seat, have you? Now, what we could do is a test here to see how much sound deafening has been lost out of this door. How boring is that? I'm not going to talk about that, guys, because I've spoken about this before. Let's just do a quick demo. Very slight different, very slight different. It feels a little bit more fuller with the sound deafening, but really, honestly, there's no difference. In fact, I think the sound is when you open the door handle. There's no echo. Whereas when you actually open the 45 Mark II, there is an echo. So if I just do this, hear that? It acoustics throughout the door, but that's really it. Oh, by the way, we shouldn't have chrome mirror cappings, but Martin's added that later on. I think that's a lovely touch and it suits the car so well, but an IXS would have just had a painted finish. It's as simple as that. But all in all, yeah, apart from obviously the front, obviously you know, we know the differences between a Mark 1, Mark 2 in terms of the styling. The bumpers were different, the headlights, the grille, everything got changed and facelifted. Obviously the rear ends of the car, etc. Obviously we have a filler cap, a filler pipe, actual protective surround trim that just protects the pipes. Apparently we got this rubber sort of insert to the arch, which it doesn't really need. Obviously in the 45 Mark II we have absolutely no protection, and we have no protection on the arch lips, but do we need it? Not really. I don't think there was any call for it. Also, I will note, in terms of suspension, the early 45s have got a softer comfort suspension, which was very much derived exactly the same suspension you got in the HHR, whereas the Mark II, I think, according to rumour, inherited the ZS suspension, the sports ZS suspension. I wouldn't say it's full-on ZS because it's not quite as lower, nor I think it is as firm, but they definitely did something to the springs and the shock absorbers to firm things up, and I've got a feeling it is very, very much a slightly softer version of the ZS setup. But the idea being, why have the comfort springs and the sport springs, so the 45 and the ZS, when they could actually make one set of springs and shock absorbers? Well, of course you're going to save money. That's what Project Drive did. But these handle brilliantly, and they're not uncomfortable. That's what I will say. So there was definitely an improvement. But in this, we don't have an anti-roll bar. In 2003, they deleted the anti-roll bar, so I don't benefit from that. But it doesn't need it because it's got the sports suspension. The sports suspension came out with the Mark IIs. They didn't come out any earlier than that, as far as I'm aware. The Mark 1s, obviously, this does have a rear anti-roll bar, so Martyn's going to be paying more money when it goes wrong. But apart from that, really, as I say, 45 back end, very plain. The Mark II back end was very plain. They had to just stretch the letters out because they didn't know what really to do with it. Whereas with the Mark 1, I think we can all agree that it's a lot more balanced. The number plate is in the correct place. We've got a small Rover badge there, a 45 badge there, British badge there with a lock. Yeah, it looks really complete, and especially with the spoiler, it looks a lot more uniform. There's a lot more going on at the back. It does look a bit more Japanese though. That's the only thing I'd definitely say with the spoiler. You can't get away from the fact of the car's Honda Civic heritage going on, whereas this actually looks, it doesn't look Japanese. It doesn't really look of anything. That's the problem. They do look a bit plain at the back, but still it makes it look a little bit different. But overall, there's not really any differences. As I say, people who know my car, yeah, leather seats, it's the one to go for. And these leather seats are not anywhere near less comfortable than the seats in this car. So if anybody will say, oh yeah, the early 45 seats are more comfortable, really? No, they're not. If they are, then these seats are warm, and that's not a fair test, because these seats, one lady owner from new, this seat has barely been sat in. That seat's really comfortable. The back seats are very, very luxurious. But as I say, in the back, we do not have the ability, well, as I say, we've got all these bits and pieces down here. Yeah, at least mine are not broken as such. But we've got map pockets at the back, and we've got lovely material on the door cards as such as well. This is a lovely material. Quite a nice ambience in the interior. As I say, lovely vents, lovely dashboard, etc, etc. We've seen this before, and I'm getting a bit sick and tired of having no light because the sun is too bright today. But we have automatic climate control as standard instead of manual heating controls. We don't have a fog light at the front fog lights at the front, because you only got that on the saloon, etc. But everything is exactly the same. We've got more window switches. Obviously Martyn's IXS does not have electric windows at the back. It is all purely windy ups. And then in terms of what's under the engine, well, we've got a 1.8k series, 117 horsepower, 160 newton meters of torque. If you want to know the performance stats, 0 to 60 with the CVT is 10.3 seconds, which is a whole second more than the manual version, but that's not too bad. Traditional automatics fare far worse than that in terms of the difference. And in terms of NPG combined cycle, you're looking at about 38 to 40 in the manual, and in this car about 33 to 35. Again, that is exceptionally good, and it just goes to show how efficient the CVT is in terms of fuel economy and its performance levels. But there really is no difference between the two engine bays. The only difference being, because this has got manual heating, we've got a heater valve at the back, whereas I have straight pipes going in, and there's a little electronic solenoid in the climate control system, etc. And that's all, the only difference there. Obviously, we've got a few little minor differences with the bumper at the front, but it's all the same. It's got air conditioning, everything's the same. However, ironically, this is weird. I might give this sticker to Martyn, because I shouldn't have this sticker on my car, and yet he's missing one on his. He should have the power steering sticker. That's one of the things that went missing with the Mark IIs. The other thing is, for Rover 45 geeks, that you will know this, this little cover on the MAF sensor that generally might fall off, because it just looks like it's just a friction fit. Yeah, this was deleted at some point. I don't know when, but it was deleted prior to Mark IIs. I've never seen a Mark II with that. But anyway, those are little details that I've picked out. Sound deafening. Now, you got the sound deafening on hatchback and saloon models pretty much prior to 2002. Again, around late 2002, that was binned. You could only get them on the saloon versions after that date, hence why I haven't got any. Does it make a difference? Fractionally, but only fractionally. But apart from that, there is absolutely no difference whatsoever, and I'm just going to steal his dipstick. This is also something that has been missing, the Rover script on the top. Now, I believe that was due to, as I say, you can't see, it's just blank here. Why was that? Well, it's simple, because the K series by this stage was being used in not just the MG versions, the MGZS, the MG versions, MGZR, etc., ZT also, but they're also used in the Freelander and the MGTF, etc. So there was Rover MG and Land Rover cars using the same engine. So what they decided is just to blank it off completely and just have the same sort of rocker cover, the sort of plastic trim rocker cover piece for all the engines. But these are little things that we do miss. That is a nice little emblem, but apart from that, I can't really see any ulterior difference. There are a few things that I might not have mentioned. Obviously, I've got these 15-inch superb alloy wheels, and they are just fabulous. Obviously, we went from certain changes like these indicators to these, which were standard on the 45 and 75. I believe the 25 may have had them as well. We've got some British flags going on, as opposed to a little Rover emblem. Why, oh why did they stop making these Rover emblems for that? I don't understand. Not sure why. But apart from that, I think we're done. And now it's going to be drive time.
Good start.
Yeah, that's a good start. Unlock button.
The signature tune.
Brilliant.
And I should do my heating controls first.
Please, Martyn, please help yourself, make yourself at home.
I think we'll have about 21. I think we'll have auto. Yeah, happy with that. What does this do? Oh yeah, the old personometer.
Oh yes.
I'll have it on my head, I think.
What do you think about the climate control and how it feels?
Feels better than it looks. I've always thought it looked a bit iffy.
Yeah,
yeah. It actually feels really quite tactile and quite jealous.
Yeah.
So let's go for a little ride.
There you go.
far cry from mine, I have to say.
Really?
I wouldn't say mine is bad.
Yeah. Bit more loose.
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that isn't that a natural feel of a Mark 1 to feel a bit more loose and
Yeah, I
a little,
think so.
little wallowy.
And I think you will also notice on mine that there are drive shaft sloppiness as well.
Okay.
So we've got a bit of a 40
Go for it.
here, so that feels good. Yeah, you'll notice on mine when you press on a bit, or even when you're not, there's a kind of bit of slop that feels like drive shaft.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a curious one.
This feels really nice.
Brakes?
Yeah, nice and progressive, not too sharp, not too soft.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
I don't like the modern car aspect of brakes that literally lock on the moment you look at the brake pedal.
Yeah. Yeah, what a pin sharp car. It's really nice.
That's good. Ignore the fuel low level light. It comes on and it goes off when it wants to.
There's a nice little island at the bottom of this hill that I like not to brake for.
Yeah.
Because you can do that in a 45.
Ah, I see. Perfect.
We'll
Especially for a CVT where there's no in a CVT where there's no having to change down. It's just seamless and you can apply power up quite nicely.
Just go to the next island.
Absolutely.
But yeah, this is one where in a lot of cars you have to sort of brake here.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I will for that cyclist, but
yes, unfortunately, take two on that
otherwise,
one.
I
oh goodness
not
me!
Done, yeah.
Typically, when we're doing drives, there's always cyclists in the way. Oh no! But handling-wise, when you've turned around the corners, compared to your own,
the same really.
Okay.
It's just that yours is it's more refined on the road because of this. I think I've got a drive shaft wear.
Okay.
Yeah.
CV joint going a little bit, possibly.
Don't think it is that actually. The CVs are fine.
That's interesting.
You'll
yeah, definitely, absolutely.
You'll tell.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's still pleasing, but this feels fresher, as it would do. You're on 53,000 miles. I'm on 113, so.
But everything's nicely to hand, and everything's the same, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels really modern as well.
It's just a 45, and yet people lambast the Mark IIs as something of a, I don't know, a car to completely avoid because the quality's gone.
I definitely have a Mark II.
Exactly.
I sort of quite like both, really.
Yeah. If you look beyond the appearance, okay, we don't like the back end of the car and the front end takes a bit of liking to get used to, but if you ignore that and get beyond it, it just drives so nicely, it pulls so nicely.
Yeah.
I go on and on about the aspect in the seamless drive that, okay, it's going to be a bit boring to somebody who's used to manual gearboxes, of course it is, but if you take it at face value as an automatic, I don't think it can be beaten when they work.
I consider it to be a luxury and a convenience myself.
Yeah. I mean, I've managed to get about 45 to the gallon out of this car on a long run on the motorway. I mean, try get that out of any automatic with a 1.8.
The brakes work
and
well.
the brakes work well, and it kicked. Yeah, that's what it does.
Yes, they do that.
Oh, yours does as well?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly
They
the
don't like it.
No.
It's like the belt sort of jumps a bit.
Yeah, that's exactly what mine does.
I'm glad that you've said that now, because I was a bit like, ooh, I wonder if Martyn's does this. Because I tell you what, when you do an emergency stop, it's like, shit, someone's gone in the back of me.
Yeah.
It feels like that. It's a real kick up the bum.
No, that's standard feature.
It does get a bit jerky at low RPM. It will sort of like do like a kangaroo hiccupy.
Yeah.
They all do that.
Exactly the same. Mine's the same.
I'm glad that they all do that, because it's clearly not an age-related thing with the gearboxes. It seems to be a design trait. We don't say flaw, we say trait.
Yeah.
How about when you're driving down the road? Is there any difference in the pitch and bounce as it undulates through the potholes?
I think yours deals with it slightly better, just because because it's a bit fresher.
Okay.
Mine's done
100.
another life on top of
Yeah,
yours,
it has.
really.
It's done double the mileage that this has.
Is he going? Right. Yeah, so I think that has to be borne in mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think mine is good until I get in yours.
Oh, I see. Let's see if we can compare notes. So let's come back to Andrew driving Martyn's. Oh, let's get in. Okay, let's go for a drive. This is going to be quite interesting. Okay, Boyne drive away. And it doesn't stall. Fantastic. It is a bit of a trait with these gearboxes. They tend to stall in drive when they are cold, but this has been warmed up, so it's not a problem. Yeah, very familiar. It pulls exactly the same way as the Mark II 45 CVT pulls. It is a little bit more wallow. Just slow down for the horses. See what I mean about things happening on this trip? Cyclists, horses, and accelerate. Yeah, it pulls exactly the same. I can confirm to you, Martyn, that it pulls entirely the same as my car. There's no lack of anything. The brakes feel very nice. I say disc brakes all round on both these cars. We don't have drums on either of the two cars. Being the 1.8, you'd have had discs as standard. You would never have had drums on the 1.8. Right. Yeah, I'd definitely say the suspension is a bit more floaty, a little bit more wallowy, but not in a bad way, just floaty. It's just more or less what you'd probably expect from a Rover 600, if I'm mistaken, because you're more familiar with a 600 than I am. So
yeah, both cars are better than the 600 in that respect. The suspension on the 600 is not really one of its stronger points.
Got you. So with the 45, you could tell that they made it a little bit, well, the HHR, they made it a little bit more dynamic, but not too much in the way of sportiness.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there was actually much difference between this car and mine.
Yeah, I don't think this is tragic, is it? It's just a little bit softer, and it's a bit older, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit more age, but this is interesting because for those of you on the channel who know that Project Milo, the deceased Project Milo, another CVT, which was an impression-free, 2003, that car drove like it was on, it was like a barge, like a ship. You turn the corner and it would just, this feels a lot more tighter, maybe because of the condition, maybe because it's an earlier car. There were a few things that this does have. This does have an anti-roll bar at the rear of the car, which does help out. Whereas my 45 doesn't really require an anti-roll bar because the suspension is naturally stiffer from the get-go. But one thing I noticed, this steering wheel is, it's rather a sort of soft touch plastic textured feel. It's not leather, it's not vinyl, it's quite cheap. And this matte finish on the steering wheel doesn't make me feel very classy about the car, whereas the Mark II, I've got a leather steering wheel.
Yeah, big difference.
I think, yes, okay, my Mark II is a connoisseur, so maybe it's an unfair one. Maybe I need to get maybe a comparison to a club Mark II, which would be a bit more realistic. But again, the dials, it just makes me feel like I'm in a Honda Civic rather than a Rover 45. There are some Japanese feeling sort of touches to this car that otherwise I prefer the Mark II for the distance it feels away from its Japanese heritage.
Yeah.
Go. I know what you mean about the drive shaft. It sort of gives a bit of there's something.
Wobble. There's a little
yeah, there is a wobble. There is a wobble when you pull away.
Yeah.
You put your foot on the gas and it sort of goes. Brakes are really nice and sharp as they are.
Yeah.
They're just so well weighted. Everything's nice to hand. I have had a bit of a feel with these heater controls, and unfortunately you are limited to 5 speeds, but the problem is with the Mark II is that it's got 8 speeds on the climate control, but it's not necessary. It's almost like 1 is like a person blowing in your face, 2 is a person blowing in your face a little bit more, and then 3 it's sort of like aha. Did I demonstrate that well?
I think you did.
So really with this one it's no nonsense. 1 is a huh from the off, and then 2 it's a nice blow, and then you don't really need it on 3 or 4 really, unless absolute necessary, usually for a demisting situation. I will point out as well, there has been some maintenance done to this car. The rear train arm bushes have been done on this car several years ago. I think that really helps. I think mine definitely could do with that. I think they make an awful lot of difference to these, considering the size of the bushes as well. In terms of the sound, I wouldn't say there's any less sound in this car, like with the sound deafening not being in all the doors, and you got sound deafening under the bonnet. I wouldn't say that there is any real difference.
I agree. It's no less sound, is it?
Which means that it justifies why Project Drive took a few of these things away, because
they could afford to.
They could afford to, and I don't think you would notice.
No.
It's only enthusiasts who would maybe notice a fraction, but that's not good enough for me. And for me, it justifies a lot of their decision making. Yes, some things were quality touches that they took away, but sometimes, no, absolutely not. Let's see if we could put it into sport mode. Yeah, I'll go back to normal mode. It's completely unnecessary. It's always the same. They just rev stupidly at 3,500, 4,000 RPM. But I don't think you necessarily go any faster, because the power band in this for torque especially is 2,700 RPM.
Yeah.
So at 3,500 it's unnecessarily spooling up when it doesn't need to. But yeah, apart from that, this drive has proven that actually there is very minimal difference between a Mark 1, Mark 2 in the suspension department. There's just a little bit more floatiness of a Mark 1, and a Mark 2 is a little bit more firmer. You can tell that there's a little bit more sporting heritage in the Mark 2. Well, I think I'm going to leave this here. This has been a really nice little comparison video between two cars that drivetrain wise are the same on paper. Just pull in, and that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much, Martyn, for letting me drive this wonderful quality 45 Mark 1. And do you know what? There isn't really any differences between the two. They're both quality cars. You just have one car that is just solid state. You can see the Honda Civic underpinnings. The Mark II adds a little bit less of the Japanese and a little bit more of Rover's input. So it's each to their own on that one. There are pros and cons on both sides. But I think I've converted you, haven't I, to a Mark II?
Yep, not that I was ever against a Mark II. Thoroughly enjoyed my drive in yours, and if I had space on my drive, I'd have another one.
Exactly. There you go. See? Converted. You take care, guys. I shall see you very soon.